Welcome back for another tutorial. This time we're going to be creating something nautical for the boys, of course the girls as well, but we do so many florals, it's really nice to do something that's more boy focused. Our Seaside kit comes with 8 yarns inside, which is the most we've ever added to one of our standard kits. Also all of the designs. I have also pre-picked all of the yarn colors for this project. We have of course our fabric marker, our washable fabric pen, which you can use on pretty much any fabrics. We will come back to that later. Also inside your kit is your little needle tube. Now you will have some sharp and blunt needles. Today we're going to be using the sharp tip needle. You should have 2 of these in your kit alongside a blunt tip needle, which you'd use for projects without stick and stitch. And we also have a needle threader, which I'm going to also show you how to use. So again, today we're going to be using the sharp tipped needle for this project. Of course, we've added all of the colors that you will need to create this beautiful look. I've picked all of these colors pre-picked as I found some people found this more useful rather than having to select colors themselves. So I really hope that you love this one. It is beautiful. Let's get started. Today I'm going to be stitching on a gorgeous little denim romper. I have added some various sizes for the designs as well, as we don't know what size garment you're going to be stitching on. You can add these to sweaters, denim jackets, tote bags. The options are really endless. So we're just going to start by cutting around the designs that you want to be using today, and then just place them around your garment to see how you want it to sort of work together. Make sure it does before you take off the backing and actually stick it to your garment. Now I also want to add a few little halves of these, so I'm just going to cut that through the center, and then I can place them sort of like where the seams of the garment are. So I'll show you, I'm just going to pop one there, and then I might just pop one up there as well. And then of course I want to use a full one as well, so I'm just going to pop that one there, and then I'm just going to place the rest of my stick and stitch to make sure I'm happy with how everything is flowing. And of course you can move it around if you find it's not working, but I'm feeling quite happy with that design now. So let's get started. I'm going to start by taking all of my stick and stitch off the back. Oop, it's a little bit windy. I am filming outside, so the wind is picking up a little bit. I'm just going to stick all my stick and stitch on, and I'm happy with how that's looking. That's all looking nicely and evenly spaced. So we're going to start here now with our boat. So we're going to start by taking our thick red yarn, so that's this one here, and we're obviously going to be using the sharp tip needle. We're going to take a really generous armful and a half of this, as I don't want to have to run out of any yarn. So I'm just going to cut off a really good armful worth and thread that onto my needle. Now let me show you how to use our needle threader, as a lot of people don't know how easy these are actually to use. So we're just going to take our sharp tip needle, and of course I put the needle threader away. We're just going to grab our needle threader, and it's got like a large hook and a small hook. We're just going to pop our needle over the large hook and just let it sit there. You're going to take your yarn and just loop it onto that little hook. And then when it's there, you just take your needle and pull it off, and you'll see you are now nicely threaded. And that's pretty much it. It helps so much. Now we don't need any fancy knots. We're just going to have a tail hanging off the end of a few centimeters. So around about that looks good. And we can get started on our project. So the stitch we're going to be using for this is going to be the satin stitch. So we're just going to start here at the bottom, and I'm going to do a red and white sort of flag look here. So we're going to pull our needle through all the way and just leave a tail underneath to tie off to of around 5 to 6 centimeters. That's probably not accurate. I'm not very good with my measurements, but that's going to be the same for everything. When we start, we're always going to leave a little tail underneath to tie off to. So we're just going to bring that needle down, and you'll see you've just got a lovely little straight stitch there. We're just going to then bring our needle next to that stitch and repeat this again until this whole section is full with red thick yarn. So you can go ahead and pause this if you like and fill in that whole section, and then come back when it's all done. Okay, we're at the last one now. I'm just going to pop that in place, and then I'm just going to skip a row because I want that row above that to be white. I'm just going to continue into this one and repeat the same thing going across towards the left. Okay, now we've done that, I can just flip over and this is how we're going to tie off. So I've got my threaded needle. I'm just going to weave it through my work there. So I'm going to bring these two tails, my starting tail and my threaded tail together. I'm just going to snip that away now, and we're going to tie those together in a triple knot and snip away any excess. This is pretty much how we're going to be tying off most of our work today. So we're just going to weave our needle through to bring those two tails together, tie together in a triple knot, and then we're good to continue. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to thread onto my needle the white thin yarn. Now I chose thin yarn because I quite like the contrast between the thick and thin when they're next to each other like that. So I've taken a good chunk of the white thin yarn, and I'm just going to go in and repeat the same process, but this time we're going to do it in the two areas that we've not done. So the ones that was above that red, so we're just going to come in here, and then obviously the section above that too. So now that we're there, I'm just going to take my needle and I'm going to thread it through the red section so that I'm now at the top part of that sail. So we're just going to fill in this section now with the same stitch. And once we filled in that section again, we're just going to do the same tie off as we did for the red section. So now I'm going to do the left side of the sail, and for this I'm going to use the light blue yarn. I'm just going to take a really good generous 2 armfuls worth of the yarn and just pop it on my needle. And for this is a very simple stitch. We're just going to pull all that yarn through, again leaving a tail underneath to tie off to, and we're going to go a stitch length away and just bring our needle down again. And we're just going to do a back stitch here, which is a very, very easy beginner friendly stitch, which most of you probably know how to do. So we're just going to go a stitch length away, bring that needle and all of that yarn through, and then we're going to take our needle into the end of the last stitch. So just where you brought the last stitch to, we're just going to pop that in there. And we're just going to repeat this going all the way up to the top. So again, a stitch length away, and again bringing that needle and all that yarn through, and then we're just going to pop our needle into the end of the previous stitch. So we're just going to do this all the way now until we get to the top of that sail. And now that we're there, we're just going to now take our needle to the top section. So we're going to go down the next row. So we're just going to take our needle to that top section again. And this time I want to create a kind of checkerboard look here. So I'm going to take my needle now and bring it to the middle part of the second stitch. So we're just going to pop that in there, and you'll see what I mean as this progresses. So I'm just going to pull that yarn through. Then I'm going to go to the middle section of that second stitch, bring my needle up, and just repeat the back stitch. So we're doing the same back stitch here, but it's just the positioning or the placement of where we're putting that stitch to create that sort of checkered look. So we're just going to pull that down. And then again, I'm going to bring my needle up from the sort of like the halfway mark of the second stitch. So we're just going to bring that up and take it into the previous stitch. I'm just going to repeat that all the way down, and then going up the next row, we're going to do the same thing until this whole section is now full. So remembering, we're just going to go halfway, that's it there, and popping that into that previous stitch, pulling that yarn through, and then you'll see now it starts to create a kind of checkered look. So we just now filled that all in, and you're good to flip your garment over, thread those yarn and that tail through, and so that they're now together and we can tie off in a triple knot. That's all done. So now we're going to thread onto our needle a good armful of the white thin yarn again. I'm just going to chain stitch this pole section here. So to chain stitch, we're going to bring our needle up, leaving a tail again, take our needle back down through the hole we just created and bring it up about a chain stitch away. Grab this yarn, wrap it around and pull through. And that's how we do our chain stitch. Now we're going to take our needle through that chain again, bring it up about a stitch away, grab this yarn here and we're just going to wrap it around and pull it through. And we're just going to do this all the way until we come to the top section. Now, if you're finding some of these stitches are going a little fast, we do have a common stitches tutorial on our YouTube, which really slows down every single stitch, which is ideal for beginners to start and practice your most commonly used stitches. So we're just going to go like this all the way until we get to the top section. And once we're there, I'm just going to anchor that down. Now I'm going to just bring my needle up again, and here I'm going to pop a little French knot. Now if you find the French knot a little challenging, you could just maybe leave this out. It's not essential. We're just going to wrap our yarn around 3 times, bring our needle down, knot into the same hole, give that bottom yarn a good pull to create a sort of like a ball, and then push that needle through. Now again, I do have some tutorials on how to do the French knot on our common use stitches, but again, this isn't essential. If you wanted to leave that out, that would be absolutely fine as well. We're going to take our threaded needle and we're just going to bring it all the way down to that starting tail and tie them together in a triple knot once again. Again, if you find some of the stitches overwhelming, I have linked our commonly used stitches video in the description, so you can come to that and learn some of the basic stitches if you're finding this a little too fast. Okay, I've just noticed that I haven't actually tied off here. I've done a few weaves and I'm just going to snip that end instead of adding a knot. And then I'm just going to take that first tail, thread it onto my needle and do the same thing. We're just going to weave through under our work and then we can just snip it away because it's got enough support under it, it won't unravel. So this is another way to tie off if you have more time and you want to take your time on your project and make it super neat underneath. You can do this. You can just weave through your work and then just snip away. I would say weaving about 5 or 6 times would keep it nice and secure. So next we're going to do the actual boat. We're going to add on a very generous armful of the light brown thick yarn. So I'm talking 2 to 3 good armfuls, just whatever you can tolerate with pulling through, because some people don't like to use that much yarn at one time, which is completely fine. So we're going to pull all that yarn through, again leaving a tail to tie off to. And here we're going to do a sort of a 4 one way, 4 another way method. So I'm going to do 4 little straight stitches here, so kind of like a satin stitch, remembering the first stitch we did on our sail. So I'm going to pop 4 in here, and then once we've done that, we're going to move across and I'm going to do 4 horizontal stitches. And we're going to again make it, I wouldn't say a checkerboard, but kind of give it that sort of wooden look is what I'm trying to go for here, and I thought that this method might work really, really well. So we're just going to go in with another little straight stitch here, which makes it number 3. The key here is to make sure you stick to 4, otherwise if you drop to 3 or 2, it just throws the pattern out a little bit and doesn't look as uniformed and neat. So we'll just pop that last little one in. So that's 4 little straight stitches there. And then I'm just going to go about a stitch length away again. And I'm just going to go horizontally this time. So we're going to bring our needle up and I'm just going to take it across. And I'm going to repeat this 4 times to fill in that little space. So we're just going to pop in one more stitch there to make it 4, and then again we're going to move across, and I'm going to do my 4 little straight stitches and then my 4 little horizontal, my 4 little straight, my 4 little horizontal until we get to the end. And then when we move on to the next row underneath, we're going to alternate so that the whatever you've used in the row above, you're going to do the opposite to on the row below, and this is going to create that really nice little wooden effect. And so we just continue like that all the way until the whole boat is filled. And then of course, once we're finished, we can just tie off our 2 ends with a triple knot. And that's your boat looking gorgeous and all complete. Next, we're going to look at the wheel. So for this, I'm going to be using our teddy bear brown, which is our thin brown yarn. So we're just going to take a very generous amount, so 2 to 3 good armfuls again, pop it onto our needle, and we're just going to go in with a chain stitch. So the chain stitch is going to be used for the circular part of this wheel. So we're just going to bring our needle up, pull all that yarn through, and we're just going to go ahead and chain stitch this whole section here. So if you need to be refreshed on the chain stitch, again, you can go back to the poll on the ship, or you can look at our chain stitch tutorial, which is linked in the description. So you can go ahead and pause this now and finish that circular part in the chain stitch, and I'll meet you back when we're at the end. So let me show you now how we finish off a circle. So we're just going to take our blunt end of our needle and we're going to thread it through our very first chain we made, pulling that yarn all the way through, and then we're just going to take our needle and anchor it into that last chain. And when we do this and pull that yarn through, you'll see you've got a perfect circle. Now we've got plenty of yarn left on our needle to continue, so we're just going to go in with a little straight stitch here for the center part, and we're just going to bring our needle from the top section, pull that yarn through, and then we're just going to anchor it into where it finishes there, and then we're just going to do this all the way around until all of these little spokes are all filled. And we've still got plenty of yarn left on our needle to fill in the center part, which I want to do with a French knot. So we're just going to bring our needle up, we're just going to put our garment on the table. This time we're just going to wrap around twice, as I don't want a really full French knot. I just want something a little bit more subtle. And we're just going to continue around this circle and fill in all of this part with French knots. So we're just going to move across, bring our needle up, and we're going to place our garment down, wrap around 2 times, and then just go back so that we can fill in that space now. Give that yarn a little pull on the bottom and pull that through. This does take a bit of practice. Don't stress if this is not working out for you first time. Honestly, it took me a long time to really master how to do the French knot, and it just takes a bit of practice. But once you get it, it's actually such a beautiful stitch to do. So we're just going to fill in all of this section with our French knot. So we'll go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back when you're there. Now underneath we can then tie off with a triple knot our 2 ends, so we're just going to weave that through and bring them together and tie them together in a triple knot. Now I've just threaded on some more of our yarn, and we're just going to do the outer parts now. So for this I was going to do the pistol stitch, and every time I did it I just didn't like how it was looking. So instead I'm doing a straight stitch, and then I'm just going to nudge forward a little bit and add another French knot on here, but this time it's going to be a 3 wrapped French knot, and we're just going to pop it in. I just felt like I had more control with it rather than the pistol stitch, even though that would have been perfect for this. This just seemed to work a little bit better. So we're just going to then take our needle and we're just going to thread through so that we bring our needle to the next section so that we're not pulling and causing any sort of tension on our garment. So we're just going to continue with that again, bring our needle up and do a nice little straight stitch followed by a little French knot, and we're going to do that all the way around until we're finished. Once we get to the end, of course, we're going to find our 2 tails, bring them together and tie together in a triple knot. And that's looking absolutely gorgeous. I love this stitch so much and really loved how it turned out. Next, I've threaded on a good armful and a half of the red yarn. This is for the life buoy. Now you will notice that we have some little design on the outside. Now this would be in real life for some rope. I am not going to be using this today because I didn't want to use too much brown because I thought it was too much of a contrast with the boat. But if you wanted to use those in your project, I would say just a little back stitch for those on the outside in a brown would look really, really nice. So we're just going to go in with our satin stitch again, and we're just going to do a red cream, red cream, red cream look here, so alternating those colours. And I'm just going to pop in our satin stitch just like we did before with the sail. Now, if you find when you are satin stitching a circular shape, it can sometimes be a little bit tricky because you lose the structure of it, and you'll know what I mean if you've done it before. So here's a little hack of how I get around it. So I'm just going to pop a few little satin stitches in there, but as I'm getting on the bend part, I'm just going to do a half stitch here. So we're just going to pop that little half stitch in, and then when I do my next satin stitch, I can then fit that in nicely, and it kind of helps to curve the stitch around, and I find this works really, really well. So once you've filled in that section there, we can then jump over to the next section because we've got plenty of yarn on our needle to keep going. So once we finish that section, we're just going to move our needle across to the next section and fill this one in the same stitch. And we're just going to do this all the way around until all of our little red segments are now finished. And then of course we can tie off together with a triple knot with our starting and our ending tail. We then just need to fill in the gaps with our other colour yarn. For me, I'm going to be using the thick cream yarn to do this. So we'll go ahead and add in the satin stitch for those sections now. Now, once you fill in that section, you're going to take your needle and you're just going to thread through the red section. So that then brings our needle to where we want it to be without any pulling, and it also keeps it looking nice and neat underneath. And we can just continue as we were. And once that's all full, we can then, of course, tie our two ends together in a triple knot. You can see I've missed threading underneath that last red section, which is a little annoying, but I must have not been fully focusing on that bit, but that's okay. And we'll just snip away those excess ends, and that is your little life buoy. And again, if you wanted to go in and do those little rope sections, you can, of course, with the little back stitch. I think would look really cute. Next, for our message in a bottle, we're just going to do the outside in the back stitch. We're going to use the black thin yarn for this, and I'm just going to start pretty much anywhere I want to and leaving a tail underneath to tie off to. You know how to do the back stitch. We've done so many so far, so you should be pretty good at it by now. So you can go ahead and pause this video, and I will meet you when we are all finished. So that's our outline all done. I also used the teddy bear brown and did a satin stitch for the cork at the top, but unfortunately my camera did not film it. But we all know how to do the satin stitch by now. So we're going to go ahead and do our little bow here. I've added on the blue thick yarn for this. And for this, we're just going to bring our needle up from the middle part of the bow. I'm just going to take my needle down again the same hole to create this loop. We're then going to take our needle underneath and pop it where we want that bow to sit. So I'm just going to take that little loop and put it over the needle and pull through. This is just a very simple lazy daisy stitch. And then we're just going to anchor that down over the top to lock it in place. And once we're there, we're going to repeat that same process, but this time on the other side. So we're going to bring our needle up and then take it back down through that same hole again to create that little loop. And then once we've done that, we can then move our needle to where we want that loop to sit. So I'm going to just take it underneath and pop it here, pop that little loop over and pull through. And again, once we're here, we can then lock that into place. So we're just going to pop that over, lock it into place. And then we can just do the little bows at the bottom. So we're just going to bring our needle up and do 2 little straight stitches there. And then we can finish it off with a little straight stitch in the center. Now I don't want to do too many knots underneath for this one, so I'm going to do the weave and snip method to tie off. So once I'm just happy with that little bow, I can then flip my garment over, and I'm just going to take my threaded needle and I'm just going to weave through my work. Probably 2 times should be more than enough for this, and then I can snip away that end, and then I can just thread onto my needle the other piece of yarn and do the same thing. Now for the little message, I've gone and added the thin white yarn. I'm just going to go and do a satin stitch here. And we're just going to tie off as we have been, and that's looking super, super cute. So for the anchor, I've taken the grey yarn and we've just done a back stitch around the edging, and then I've just gone in and filled in all the spaces with lots of just random little back stitches just to fill it in. Now, if you'd like to add some ocean waves, you just take your fabric marker and you can draw them all over your garment where you'd like to position them. For these, I'm going to be using the white thin yarn, and I'm going to be using a back split stitch for this one. So let's get those drawn on where we want them to be, and I'm happy with how they are all looking. So I'm just going to thread onto my needle some white thin yarn. So I've added on lots of the white yarn, a good armful worth should be fine. And we're just going to bring our needle up from our starting point, making sure to leave a tail underneath to tie off to. We're just going to do our usual back stitch. So we're going to go 1 stitch length away and bring our yarn down. And then again, leaving about 1 stitch in distance, we're just going to bring our needle back, but this time instead of going into the end of the previous stitch, we're actually going to go through the middle. So effectively it splits that stitch in half. And I really like this one for the waves. I think it gives more of a wavy look. So we're just going to do this all the way until we get to the end. And now that I'm bringing my last stitch down, I don't want that one to look out of place. So we're just going to bring our needle about a millimetre or 2 away from that end, just so that I can go in and split that last stitch again so that it doesn't look out of place. We're then going to weave through our work, bring those ends together and tie off. And you are all done. All of your gorgeous little designs are now stitched and it's looking absolutely gorgeous. So let's remove the stabilizer. You're going to pop your garment under running cool water. I would advise not to use hot water, just go with cool to lukewarm. You might need to use your finger just to sort of move it along a little bit, but after about 30 to 40 seconds of under running water, you'll notice that the stabilizer starts to melt away. Now, I would suggest heavily soaking this or doing this 3 to 4 times, as sometimes when we dry our garments, it still feels quite stiff, and that's because some of the stabilizer is still present. You can throw these in the washing machine on a delicate cycle. I wash it on its own or in one of the laundry bags, but it does hold up in the wash as well. Once you're done that, you can then flat lay to dry and you are all done. Your project is finished. I hope you loved this one, guys. Happy stitching.